Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Great. Just to let you know, I'm on for only a half hour, unfortunately, and it's how I start my trading day. And I'll tell you right now, you could go on for like 3 hours on this. I could do even a class on this. But what I wanted to show you in here is how do I start? Well, the first thing I do in the morning is I'll use Thinkorswim or TradingView, and I look at the futures on the upper left. So I look at the bond market, I look at the Dow, I look at the Russell, the NASDAQ, and the ES. Now, I look at a lot of other things, but that's what I look at first thing in the morning, whether it's 5 in the morning or whether it's 8. So that's the first thing I look at. The second thing I look at in here, because I do a lot of preparation. So I just want you to know it takes a ton of preparation to be able to do this. So let me just tell you that. So a lot of what I do is looking at action of things, looking at charts. That's really number one. I'll go into a mistake I made today. Looking at news and looking and scanning. So the first thing is the futures. That's the first thing I'm looking at. The second thing I'm looking at is definitely the correlation of, let's say, bonds and futures. So if I see the futures temporarily up for some odd reason, the bond market getting trashed, yeah, I'll consider that as, well, maybe I should look for short ideas and so on. The other thing I do is I go to TradingView. And this is one of the beauties of TradingView. So you can go into foreign markets. So if the US markets are up for some reason and you see the German market and the Japanese market and a number of other ones like the UK market get nailed, it's actually that's a footsie, but that kind of idea. And here's the UK. If you see them doing nothing, a lot of times that's a good tell that the US markets are going to come back to unchanged. Now, if these are getting destroyed and the US markets are like unchanged, yeah, I'm still going to scan for short ideas. And like I said, vice versa. So just keep that in mind. So that's one of the things. So definitely foreign markets or correlated markets, the futures. The second or third or fourth thing I do is I'll go to Market Watch and I'll go to my main list. My main list changes every day. Now, I'm happy to share it now, but like I said, by tomorrow it could completely change. But this is the most active ones or the ones in the news. Like I added Roblex today when I didn't have Roblex before because a lot of these speculative ones are moving. So here's my main list. Let me copy and paste that into the social media room. So if I could figure out how to do it. There. There you go. So I hope that helps. So I go into my main list and I add mark change. I can't tell you how important that is. So what you're doing in there is you're looking, this is before the opening or after the close. That's a net change, during the day. So why is the mark change so important? Because of this. So let me just try to tie together how I do it before you even look at news. And I'll show you some of that. So the first thing I look at is, like I said, correlated markets. So I'm watching like CF, which is an agricultural stock. Now I'm looking at the charts and I'm looking at this hooking up on the MACD. But I also saw the stock was downgraded today. On the other hand, the commodities were going nuts today. So it's a commodity agricultural fertilizer stock. So what do I mean by watching the mark change? Well, as I saw CF downgraded, a companion stock Mosaic was unchanged to up. So that made me think, don't pay attention to the CF, to the news. I didn't buy it on the opening. The stock went straight up. but definitely watching the mark change is a big deal. Also, if I see like most down and out of nowhere, I see like um like Lamb Research up 30. Definitely I'm going to look at that whole group and find why like Lamb Research is up, and is that going to affect a lot of the other chips. So that's a big deal on what I'm watching. So a lot of what I'm watching is companion stuff. Like I said, commodities versus like the commodity stocks. Going over the mark change. Then the next thing is definitely scans and charts. So I'll show you what I'm talking about in here. Like I said, I'm not going to have a lot of time, unfortunately. So the first thing is, what do I use for the MACD? I'm really into bull flags, bear flags, and the MACD. So the MACD, I use a simple 31016. That's it. So you'll see there's like an LBR oscillator. Basically, rip this off. That all it is exponential. So if you go into this, change that to exponential, and that's the other one. And it's a point of contention for me of which one works better. And it drives me nuts. Not that anybody asked, but that I try to jigger it around, and I'm not sure. But then I go in and I look at daily. And when I'm going to swing trade, I'm going to look at the 4-hour and see if there are sort of some similarities on different things in the same group. So this one just looked like a bull flag. That's why I like CF. Because CF looked like a better bull flag. So that's number one. Number two is there are a lot of these crazy stocks that if they're crazy yesterday, you look for the ones that might be crazy today. Here were some of the stocks that I scanned for that had a 4-hour oversold MACD right here. But the blue line, the slower line, was over 0, and the stock was over the 50. That's all you do. I mean, you could do this. This is just a readily available scan. Just a MACD. It's under here on the fast, over here on the slow with the 10 and the 3 and the 10, and it's over the 50. And you'll see the performance of most of these, I bet, is up. So that's the next thing I do, scanning. And now if the bonds are down like 10, a point, and the farm markets are getting trashed, these kind of ideas are less likely to work. On a day when the market looked just moderately, could do whatever it wanted, that, choppy, then these are more likely to work. So I'll show you. There's Fiserv. Hasn't really moved yet. There's HARD. There's another one, and look what it's doing today. So I'm doing a scan of just a 4-hour, and let me just tell you, this changes all the time. I'm trying to get in the head of algorithms. Most algorithms are so simple, it's embarrassing. It's like over a moving average, under. It's not like 50 indicators. So I'm looking for oversold in an uptrend. So oversold over the 50 on a 4-hour, and the blue line's over 0. So that's the way I look at it. So I'm not allowed to really share the scan, I don't think. I can just tell you about it. So, that's kind of something that's just shared on the Chart Patterns Mastery site. So, but all it is oversold in an uptrend. That's what I'm looking for. You can use the stochastic, all that, but the MACD 310 seems to work. And all I do is I have 8 million scans, tons of scans. But if the market looks like choppy, I'm going to look for bullish scans. Plus, if you had a lot of these stocks go nutso the day before. So then I'm going to look for bullish scans. And you're going to see like Tyson Chicken. Yeah, look at that one. I got out of that by the skin of my teeth last week, but oversold over the 50. If you join Chart Patterns Mastery, you got to be prepared for puns. I'm sorry, but that's just part of the site. GTLB, this is one I'm real interested in. As you see, it's already gotten over the 40. It's already gotten over the blue line, but look at it 2 days ago. Yeah, there you go. Now, that doesn't mean to blindly buy. That means to then go to a shorter term chart and look for the reversal pattern. So that's what I try to do. If you take Twilio, look at that sucker. But look on how it had a little wiggle right here. So when it was here, you had to go to a shorter term chart and look for that. Yeah, look at that. That's a bull flag. That's a big old move right there. I missed it. Somebody pointed it out after it happened, but just point them out all the time and I'll find one later. But there's a nice bull flag for you. So definitely when the market looks choppy to up and the foreign markets aren't getting killed and the bond market's not getting killed, I'm going to look for those type of buy ideas and then go to a shorter term chart to initiate my trade. So that's one thing. And it worked really well on these. In fact, almost everyone's up. So now there's another thing in here really interesting. A lot of people look and say, well, let's take Wingstop. There you go. A lot are like, yeah, that's oversold. And the blue line's over zero back here. But it's in a downtrend. Not because it's pointing down, because it's under the 50. So if it's oversold in a downtrend, it's much less likely to work. I mean, this is a crazy stock. And as you see, it's underperforming. So pretty cool on how that works. That's why you got to combine like the 50 moving average. And it works really well. The other thing is definitely look at news. So I wanted to show you on how I do it. So all I do is I go to TweetDeck. You have a Twitter feed, you go to TweetDeck and you build a feed. So I'll show you how to do it because I like free when it comes to news because I've done it before where I have 10 news sources I pay for and it drives me nuts. There's Tony Batista. I traded with him. Great guy. He had his own disco in Chicago back in the 80s, just to let you know. But all I did was I go like this. I go to plus down here. Then I go to list. So plus and list. Then I go to search or create list. I have a lot of lists. So you go to create. So in there. And up there, by the way, I'm using a 50 simple to answer your question, JC. But here we go again. It could be a 50 exponential. I'm changing them all the time. But in the long run, I use the simple, just to let you know. So that's a great question. So here you go. Create a new list. So that's all I'm doing. So let me show again. So you go to plus, you go to list, you go to create list, and this is just with your Twitter account. Yeah, I'm at Chris Brecher, just so you know, in there. So let's just call it options. Well, let's say stocks. There. And then what you do is you add anything that seems like something you'll want to look at, like CNBC. And then you'll add that. And then you'll add like CNBC. That's good enough. Then you can do like Fox Business. Add that. So, and you can keep going like stocks to trade. You can look up people, individuals. I don't want to show them, but sure, you could put that in there also. How about simpler trading? There you go. Add that too. You can ask Danielle, you can add Allison, Taylor. It's worth it having all them in there. There you go. You can add Mary Ellen, TG, Joe, all of them in there. I don't think I'm in there because I'm already a Chris Brecher, I think. So you can add stocks to trade, black box stocks, But now when you have that column, look at that. You have all of CNBC, Fox Business, and if some of them are too many, you just take them off. So just keep that in mind. It's in there. So that's how I do it, and that's how you build a list without having to pay for it. And then you get a lot of good blog posts by people with simpler. So next thing, how do you not overtrade? Well, in answer your question, because that's not really the preparation as much as the overtrade to me is a little different than other people's overtrade. And I'll show you an example. So Tesla today, we shorted Tesla. Now, there's a big difference between overtrading or admit you're wrong and then you admit the same stock you're right. That's not overtrading in my book. So, what do I mean by that? I mean this. So, right here, we shorted Tesla right there. So, I got stopped out here, right there. Got stopped out. Lost about a little money. We were doing a spread, so we didn't lose that much. But heck, then it had a bear flag. So I got back in. A lot of times, though, I'll buy it up here and get in down here. I have no ego when it comes to these volatile stocks. That to me isn't overtrading. So just to let you know, that isn't overtrading. So and like Lorna said, what's the plan? You got in here. What was your plan for shorting it? You didn't have it. So, and now you might get in because you're opinionated or you hear Kramer, not you personally. I do it too. But boy, was this a better initiation than here. So, yeah, I did that fear of missing out. And then once I did, I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I sort of right in here. What the heck? And got out here when I had my reason. That's where that plan really helps, especially if you're new. The best thing you can do is look for tight patterns in uh, tight, um, tight patterns and tight trend lines. So if I do a spread, I always get out as a spread. I don't put in, I usually look at the midpoint because some of the stocks can be a lot more wide markets than others. Usually, like a Tesla, if you were buying a vertical, like a vertical call debit spread, so you were buying like this. I'm not saying to buy it, but you see it's 415. The first thing you do is you go to those options and see if they're wide. Well, they are sort of wide. Not much, 5 cents. If they're that tight, you usually could put market, but I usually just try at the midpoint. And then if I get filled, if I don't, maybe a point that. But I always put in a limit. So just to let you know, midpoint is usually the default. You can move it a little. But if you have a real wide market, let me show you. So you go and take Lamb Research and you want to buy a deep in the money call spread. So you want to buy a vertical of 602 and a half, 622 and a half. That I'm not going to do it. I'm just showing you this. That's the midpoint if you take the midpoint. But if you press market, they might buy it on the offer and sell it on the bid. You'll get destroyed. You got to try to do it at the midpoint. And then if that doesn't work, maybe move it a couple of cents, but not market, not market. So I just want to let you know that not market. Now, when it comes to new traders, what's the best way to trade? Well, the best way is to find first some like 4-hour good charts. Have everything line up like the bond market, the NASDAQ, the foreign markets. And then what you do, though, is you start small. No doubt you start small. And then you look for defined patterns. So defined patterns. So, what do I mean by defined patterns? And this is the way to build confidence. So, this is the way to build confidence. You go into this, and this is a scan that it's not really my scan. It's a squeeze scan. All you're doing is you're taking like a 5-minute squeeze. This is all just readily available on Thinkorswim. You're doing one thing. So you're just doing a 5-minute squeeze. Under anything, no. Over anything, no. And you're looking for defined patterns. Now, squeeze is a consolidation pattern. That doesn't mean a bull or bear flag. I would start with bull flags, bear flags, or Brecher ledges. And if you don't see it, then don't trade it. That way you get a ton of confidence of looking for certain patterns and only trading them. Now, if you see a bear flag like this and you go and short it here because you think it breaks and then it gets here, so you get stopped, well, at least you tried. But this is where the overtrading comes in. Let's say that you got out and then the whole market starts going down and it goes back to that price. You can always get back in. That to me isn't overtrading. What overtrading is when you get in something after you get out and then you get in back in without any reasons. That's overtrading. So here's some 5-minute squeezes. I'm not saying to trade any of them. These aren't up squeezes or down squeezes. I'm looking for bull or bear flags. That's all I'm doing. And start with that. And or trend lines. I mean, either. So let's just go to this. And I'm going to say this is 30. Now, one thing to notice in here, and this is another thing about news. Tomorrow's the CPI. And here's another free site for you. There are 2 more free sites I think you need. One is this. Investing Economic Calendar. This is free. I haven't even signed up. I'm sure it's going to have a pop-up. Then what you do is I'm going to be very US centric. And you're going to look at this week and you're going to go to filters. And then you're going to clear and just go to the US. I mean, that's what I do. So you got the US. Then you go to importance. And I do usually 2 and 3 and apply. And there you go. So when you look at these, though, look at the 3 stars. And that'll tell you the most important. And the 3 stars for tomorrow is the core CPI at 8:30 a.m. This is a big deal to be able to have this for free. The reason I bring this up, it's a little hard at this time of day to go and buy a bull flag when traders might flatten before a big event. So just keep that in mind. So that's one. Here's another one for you. Briefing earnings. Another one I haven't logged in. So in fact, let me just share this with you. By the way, that's my main list. All right, let me share this with you. There, that's briefing. And let me go to the other site. This is just earnings. That's an earnings calendar. Then over here is the economic calendar. And let me share that. Like I said, I wish I had 2 hours to do this. And this is all the stuff I'm doing in the morning. And as you see, it sort of comes into play because let's say you think a stock looks great. Without me even looking, I bet the NASDAQ's near unchanged. Yeah, there you go. Because everybody's worried about the CPI, which means if you see a bull flag, you got to back off a little if you know all the economic reports coming out. So that's why those 2 things are a big deal. Now, getting back to it about the briefing. So here's your earnings thingies. Now, we like playing earnings, not by taking shots on things. We like trading the earnings before the stocks before earnings. So what did I just talk about? The NASDAQ flattening before an event. A lot of times stocks will flatten before an event. So if the market opens way up and a stock opens way up because the market pulls it up, but they have earnings that night or the next morning, a lot of times it goes back to unchanged. Now, we combine a lot of chart indicators also, but that's the theory. So a lot of times we trade the stock afterwards, and then we'll trade the stock, beforehand, and we'll trade the stock and options afterwards. So just keep that in mind. Also, keep in mind, a lot of people are successful with a lot of selling volatility into earnings. Totally understand. But for me, I was in the IBM pit on the CBOE for 8 years. Do you know how many times I had an option position into earnings? None. Zero for 8 years. 8 years. Because it was so busy beforehand and afterwards. But if I am going to take a shot, play the earnings, I'm going to play it with like butterflies or iron condors like Danielle does. That's the way to sell premium. So just keep that in mind in there. Definitely, definitely. By the way, that's another one that you mentioned about trading economics. I love that site too. That has like 8 million futures on there. So that's another one. But the reason I'm bringing this up is if you have Delta and you have Delta before the opening on Thursday, and let's say the market opens way up tomorrow on the CPI. So, and you're like, yeah, maybe that reversion thing in Delta. Well, you better know that if Delta's having that, then you got to look at the companion stocks like United Air, because they'll flatten out also if this flattens out. So it's really neat to have this in here to be able to see when the earnings are. And this goes way out, probably to the end of the month. So that's pretty cool to have that in there. So now there's another thing with these earnings. So we just talked about companion stocks. So we talked about like if Delta has earnings, you watch UAL. So if you have, let's say, that mark change I told you about. Now, I don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, but I want to show you a great hack. It's not perfect because it'll have a lot of symbols, but let's take Wednesday, July 19th. You see it right here. It takes you forever to type all those in as you want to watch those earnings. You left click, hold it all down. Then you right click and press copy. Then you go into Market Watch and you just add, let's say, earnings 1. Create a list. Earnings 1. Then what you do is you go to this right here. I don't know why it's not showing. Let me see if I move this. Import. And then you want to paste those symbols you just copied. And there they are. Now you got to double check to be sure they all have news because I'm left clicking on everything. Numbers, letters, but that's a quick way to do it. And that way, if you're trading Delta, you'll know what the mark change is and you'll know if you want to trade the other stocks in the group. That's a fast way to do it. So all you're doing is you're highlighting, you're left click, and then you right click, and then you import them. It's a cool way to do it. And like I said, I can have like 3 hours of this kind of stuff to show you. All these hacks and the way to do it. But the first way is definitely to watch the markets in the before the opening. Watch the mark change of, let's say, a big list, like I use my main list. The next thing is to look up news using TweetDeck. And then the next is scanning for charts. I'll scan for setups on the long side and the short side. And if you're new at this, look for the tight patterns. And the tight patterns that don't have a lot of resistance above if you're doing bull flags, and not a lot of support below if you're doing bear flags. So now this is a crazy stock. I'm not saying to trade it, but there's a bear flag theoretically with nothing underneath. So if you're trading, let's say, Citigroup, yeah, you could trade that. Like I said, I'm not going to trade Broadcom. It's a monster. But if you could watch Citigroup, you can have tight stops, and that's the way I try to trade these. So I hope this makes sense. Like I said, I wish I had more time, but those are some of the preparations I do on the opening, and I hope that helps. So take care.